Well, coming up on today's show, the first Tesla Model 3 demo cars arrive here in Europe. The Polestar 2 says it will be completely future-proof, and the CCS combo plug looks to take down CHAdeMO with one of its unique selling points at the moment. Those stories and plenty more. It's a big day today of news on the EV News Daily podcast. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the show, Friday 25th of January. My name is Martyn Lee, and I've been through every EV story I can find today, and my goodness, there was a lot of news to get through. Here's the highlights you need to know about. As always, thank you to everyone who supports this show, including myev.com. They do help me make the show. The team there have built the first marketplace in the world of buying and selling electric vehicles. And if that's going to be you sometime this year, maybe trading up and moving on, maybe getting into EVs for the very first time, check out myev.com. And if you just want to learn about things along the way, well, you always can. And they always set our question of the week, which I will remind you about at the end of the show, because you've got a couple of days to get your answer in, and then we'll read it out on Sunday. Welcome to the community. Welcome to the gang. Welcome to Patreon, a new producer of the show. That is you, Mia. Thank you, Mia. Mia Opelstrup. Thank you very much for joining up as a producer on Patreon and helping put this show together. A quick bit of news, not specifically about EVs, but there is a big connection. The Renault boss, Ghosn, announced today that he is resigning from the top spot as chairman and CEO of Renault, throwing into doubt the shaky alliance that Ghosn helped forged between all three automakers of Renault, Nissan and Mitsubishi, says Green Car reports. Under Ghosn, Nissan built and sold the world's first really mass-market, fully electric vehicle all around the world. In 8 years on sale, the Nissan Leaf sold more than 386,000 of them so far. It was the world's best-selling EV, and it still is. The Model 3 will take that crown pretty soon. And also, Ghosn told CNBC back in 2017 now that the automakers that he ran collectively made a profit on EVs, and that's pretty elusive even these days with the costs falling of other makers not being able to turn a profit. He says that his collectively were a profitable business selling electric cars, and he really was a big fan of them. Back in 2009, Ghosn spearheaded Nissan's efforts to make the very first Leaf and sell it around the world. He committed billions of dollars to a big risky enterprise, developing the Leaf, the battery production, the marketing, and billions more on building and selling EVs in China, the biggest opportunity market for automakers in the world. And he is still having his bail denied. That was the news earlier this week. If you hadn't heard, he applied for bail, offered to hand in his passports and wear a tag, higher security so he can't go anywhere. And the Japanese legal system still denying him any kind of bail. Back in November, he was first charged, and that rumbles on. And he is, was a monster in the car industry for what he was doing with electric cars. And we'll carry on following the story. In Norway, during the course of this month, 17 Tesla Model 3s have been registered so far. Now, these units in Norway are most likely demo cars, and they're going to be available at the 12 Tesla stores they have in Norway, says Pedro Lima at Push EVs. The arrival of the demo units happens a couple of weeks before the very first deliveries start for the Norwegian customers. I'm curious, he says, to see how many of the units of long and mid-range Tesla are going to make and ship to Europe before the standard range becomes available. He says, I think most Europeans will wait for the cheapest and most efficient variant of the Model 3, since here in Europe the travel distances are shorter and we'll be okay with the standard range Model 3. Now, I've seen 3 different posts in the last 24 hours on Twitter with photos of car carriers transporting performance Model 3s. Some of them in heading to Munich. Zurich in Switzerland, actually. So this looks like... So the main shipment, by the way, is still on the way. The ship, the Glovis Captain, is still heading across the Atlantic. That's with the thousands of Model 3s, the very first ones in Europe, as that opens up a brand new market for the Model 3. They're on the way. So these have been delivered under the radar somewhat. They're demo units. I don't think they're for customers, but we'll watch that story as well. I'll put a link to the article in the show notes. Sticking to General Motors' underpinnings for the new Opel Corsa / Vauxhall Corsa, whatever the brand is called in your country, would have meant paying a licence fee. So the owners of the brand, PSA, paying General Motors a licence fee. So PSA decided to go it alone, go back to the drawing board and start development of a whole new platform for the Opel and Vauxhall Corsa from scratch. As a result, the new Super Mini will ride on the same common modular platform as the next generation Peugeot 208, for instance, according to Adrian Padenot for Motor1.com. Now, while conventionally powered versions will have the latest piston engine, there's also going to be a zero-emission variant of the new Vauxhall Corsa / Opel Corsa, and it's going to go by the name of the e-Corsa. Great little city car. Won't have the biggest battery in the world because it hasn't got the biggest footprint, unless they've made advances on battery technology. I mean, it physically can't. It's going to be like a, what do you reckon, 20 to 30 kilowatt hour battery? I mean, it's a small car. There's only so much room that you can shove some batteries. The electric hatch will ride on the eCMP platform used by an assortment of EVs coming from the bigger, wider parent company, the PSA Group. Motor One's article is linked in the show notes if you want to read more. And let's talk about Polestar. We talk about the Polestar 1 a fair bit, a pretty monster hybrid car. It'll do 100 miles on battery alone before the piston engine even kicks in. What about the Polestar 2? That is going to follow very soon. That's going to be pure EV. Now, Inverse have taken a look at the Polestar 2, and particularly how connected it will be. They're taking a few tips from Tesla and taking it even further in a wide-ranging description of the software that you're going to get with your Polestar 2. Polestar explained that the car will come with an Android-based system. It's going to be Android-based and always on, always connected to the net. It'll get over-the-air updates all the time, like your smartphone does. The Polestar system is going to come with apps, services, technologies that you use on your Android smartphones already. Things like Google Maps, designed and adapted specifically to be in-vehicle experiences. The car's also going to have an embedded Google Assistant that supports car-based actions like changing the temperature. I imagine things like playing different music, calling people. If the apps aren't to the driver's liking, the system will also support Google's Google Play, which is their app store, which is really interesting. So they've gone down the route of using a custom Android system, but to control the whole car. So they say it will be fully future-proof. Super interesting article on that. Good work, Polestar. And back to the company that they seem to have drawn some inspiration from, because Tesla are really the only ones that you can wake up in the morning and your car got better overnight. Polestar want a piece of that action. The legacy automakers need to catch up with that pretty damn quick. But talking about Tesla, in Fremont, where they make the cars, the police department are turning to a rather novel solution to get in line with the city's goal of lowering greenhouse gas emissions by preparing to launch a pilot program to actually use one of the cars built in Fremont. That would be a Tesla Model X, reports Autoblog. Well, last year they bought a used 2014 Model S to start testing with. It was $61,000, and then they added, it would normally be a Dodge Charger that the police force use, but they took it as service, replaced it with a Model S, took about $5,000 to add all the policey bits, crash bumpers and digital computers and the light bar on top. So they're in for about $66,000 investment on this thing, but of course, police cars are pretty much always, depending on what force it is, they can be in use 24 hours a day with 2 or 3 different shifts of drivers using the car. So with no fuel, you are making those cost savings back for the police department as well, which has installed some PV, some solar, so they're actually running their first Tesla on pure green power. I'm surprised, frankly, the police force in Fremont, where they make Teslas, aren't already fully in bed with the company, but they are catching up. That's great news. And staying with Tesla, as per the CNBC article I mentioned yesterday, according to an ex-employee, they're always a good source of information, aren't they, ex-employees, but especially people who got fired a few hours earlier anyway, who was involved in the delivery operations of Tesla. And CNBC say they found a current employee who would talk under anonymity. The layoffs that happened recently at Tesla appear to have impacted workers across every department and region, from factory workers, recruiters, receptionists. Deep cuts hit Tesla's delivery, sales and Model S and X production teams. It's really just heartbreaking news how many people are affected when any large company does this. But when Tesla, I mean, they're still up on 6 months ago. They were hiring at such a quick rate that the way that they seem to grow the company seems to be hire quickly and then take stock and say, okay, these people haven't met the standards up to scratch. They're not working in a department, if you like, that we are currently prioritizing. You know, I see both sides, both pros and cons, you know, from a kind of corporate side of it. If you're going to grow quickly, you've got to hire quickly and then also really be good at firing quickly. You read those management books that like, the secret to a great management isn't hiring, but it's knowing when to fire. Well, yeah, that's pretty sucky if you're on the end of it, though, and you're a family and you're making rent at the end of the month. So, as always, thoughts and feelings with those who have been laid off. Well, Tesla officially replied, and I got hold of their statement to read out to you. They say this: we recently announced that we are no longer taking orders for the 75 kilowatt-hour version of the S and the X to streamline production and provide more differentiation with the Model 3. As a result of the change and because of improving efficiencies in our production lines, we've reduced Model S and X production hours accordingly. At the same time, these changes, along with continuing improvements, gives us the flexibility to increase our production capacity in the future as needed. We'll be providing more details on our earnings call next week. End quote. Well, Formula E is back this weekend, and earlier this week I was at an automotive industry shindig, we'll call it, an awards do on Tuesday night. The What Car Awards, been running for over 40 years here in the UK. And for the first time, a Korean manufacturer winning. For the very first time, more importantly, for this podcast, an electric car was named as the overall car of the year. And on my table was someone who you may have seen present Formula E. I was sitting next to Nikki Shields, who is one of the TV presenters for Formula E. Fascinating chat with Nikki. She is not only a superstar in Formula E circles, but such an enthusiast with all kind of, not only all racing, but electric racing as well. So a really interesting night to sit and talk to Nikki about how she covers kind of Formula E with jetting around the world. And actually, it was Wednesday morning, and she was sticking to the soft drinks. And it's because in a few hours after the awards dinner, she was jumping on a plane and heading to Santiago, Chile. Well, Formula E is back on the track this weekend, and Nikki will be doing the TV presenting just 2 weeks after the last race in a racing series historically accustomed to a month-long break between some races. Jameson Dow for Electrek says, for those of us in the EV world, we're delighted that Formula E is back after just a couple of weeks. BMW driver Alexander Sims is someone that we always keep an eye on because not only is he a professional racing driver, unlike many of the other drivers on the grid, he's a big EV fan on the roads. He drives an electric car. And as his daily driver, he was an early Tesla Roadster owner and also a BMW i3 daily driver as well. Looking forward to Formula E this weekend. Well, finally, moving on to charging. And one of the key advantages, we'll call it that CHAdeMO, the CHAdeMO plug has over CCS Combo is the vehicle to the bi-directionality of the charging. Vehicle to grid, vehicle to home, pilot schemes all around the world. It's been happening in Japan, by the way, with the original Leaf, as long as you're with the right utility company. But really, more and more places are really looking into vehicle to grid. Indeed, we had a special a few weeks ago, a Saturday special with Mark from Nuvi, which is a vehicle to grid company. If you want to check that out, go back about 6 weeks or so, Saturday special with Mark Trahan. Fascinating guy to talk to. And he was telling me about how CHAdeMO has got this capability at the moment, but it's coming with CCS, but he couldn't kind of give me any more details. I mean, obviously, he's privy to the information. And now we've got the confirmation that he was alluding to. Charin has released the roadmap for grid integration of its charging systems based on the CCS Combo plug. Up until now, not been bi-directional, but it's coming, says Mark Kane at InsideEVs.com. Initially, the organisation was busy with making CCS popular around the world and increasing the power output. Now with the power at 350 kilowatts, or maybe even more actually, with CCS 2.0 standard, the new standard will include grid integration features. The timetable is staged, though. So today, Grid-compliant charging is stage 1. Then it moves on to the next stage in 2020, where CCS, the standard CCS, will be more open to being controlled by the grid. So a bit more capability in there to charge your car when it's most appropriate to the grid. Then in 2020, they'll also bring cooperative charging, which moves it on a stage. In 2025, CCS then becomes bidirectional for vehicle to home, and at the same time, they will enable aggregated bidirectional charging, where it becomes, I think, super smart. So like vehicle to grid and being able to use your car to balance the grid. Now, clearly, that is 6 or 7 years away, and I'm sure people are eager to start doing trial projects or even bigger scale things sooner than that, but it's good to know that it's coming with CCS. And, you know, these things sometimes get sped up a little bit. Well, with the recent increase in Tesla vehicle break-ins and vandalism popping up across social media, the CEO of Tesla, Elon Musk, recently hinted at an upcoming thing called Sentry Mode. And I was going to talk about this yesterday, and it was in my show notes to be on yesterday's podcast, and I was just about to read it, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to just go back and just make sure that I've got the definitions correct, because I'm not a Tesla owner. This isn't a Tesla podcast. There's those specialists out there that would know it just immediately, and I just needed to double check the exact hardware spec that your car will need. So, if you have an S, an X, or a 3, cars that are equipped with enhanced autopilot hardware will get this, what Elon calls Sentry Mode. Now, Sentry sounds like it's a protector, if you like, but it's not really. It's not going to start, protecting against these, but it will capture what's happening. The reveal comes via Twitter after a user found a big dent in his car and said, "Hey, Elon, how can you help with this?" Tesla's Sentry Mode is coming with cars with enhanced autopilot, said Elon Musk. Enhanced autopilot, which is the driver assist software, was first enabled back in February 2017 with the version 8 software update. There are 8 cameras around the car and 12 ultrasonic sensors and radar. And so even though there's no detail about this, people online are speculating actually maybe what will happen with a high-capacity thumb drive, like a 128 gig USB stick or something. It'll either always be recording all 8 cameras, or maybe the sensors will pick up when there's activity around the car and start recording then. No details yet, pure speculation, but another sign that one day you'll wake up if you have a Tesla with enhanced autopilot. You will get this because Elon says it comes under safety and security. So even if you haven't paid, let me get this straight again, because I'm not the massive Tesla fanboy that some are. If you haven't paid for those features, but your car is capable of it, you just haven't upgraded yet, you will get this under the banner of safety and security. I'll put a link in the Teslarati article in the show notes if you want to read more. Right, this is the final story we'll get to today because I'm aware of the time and how busy you are. This is BP investing in a Chinese EV charging outfit called PowerShare. Well, BP recently bought the ChargeMaster, the biggest charging network here in the UK, rebranded it on Tuesday as BP ChargeMaster. And now their first direct investment in China sees the energy giant step up its interest in EVs, reports Business Green today. BP's underlined its growing interest in the EV sector and wanting to be part of the EV story and the fast-expanding EV market as well. With the announcement that it's invested in Chinese charging technology specialist PowerShare, the oil and gas giant's venture arm is responsible for this. It's called BP Ventures. An undisclosed sum has been invested with the private equity firm Detong Capital Partners. PowerShare provides an online platform that connects EV drivers, charge point operators and power suppliers, streamlining the charging experience from locating a charge point through to paying for the power supply itself, BP said. I'll put a link to Business Green in the show notes. Just a quickie then, if you want to take part in this week's question of the week, I'd love to hear from you, and I'll read out your answer on Sunday, as we always do on Sunday's show. Here's the question. So, what's the best way for you to get your first experience of driving an EV if you haven't yet? And if you are an EV driver, think back to before you'd ever driven an electric car. How do you wish it would have happened? Did you have to jump through lots of hoops to do it? Was there a simpler way? Was it test driving a car from a dealer that was cooperative? Was it hiring one for the weekend or an experience centre? Let me know your thoughts. And email hello@evnewsdaily.com or leave a comment in the various platforms the show goes on. There are 178 patrons now of the podcast who mean their generosity means you get to listen to this show for free every day. And I'd love to read your name out next. Go to patreon.com, patreon.com/evnewsdaily. Thank you to Phil Roberts from Electric Future, an early premium partner of the podcast, ef.energy, if you want to see what he gets up to at some commercial scale solar and storage here in the UK. Hello to electricmotoring.net and Paul Hussey and the gang. If you want to get yourself in a Tesla in the Chicago area, check out electricmotoring.net. And hello to Brad Crosby, also a premium partner of the show. Well, there are 367 previous episodes online for free. You can download it from where you get podcasts from. If you hit subscribe, it means you haven't got to download the show. Just get it automatically and first and free. Can you do me a favour? I'd love for you to share this podcast with at least one person who you can think of maybe now who is into EVs or is curious about technology, or maybe a forum, or just post it online. If you can share this with at least one person, you've shared the knowledge and maybe we'll persuade them to drive an EV. If you want to say hi on the socials, I'd love to hear from you. Search EV News Daily to find me. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow.